Welcome, everybody. Thank you for clicking on the video. Thank you for taking the time to watch this. My name is James Esparza, and I present to you World Without End. If you've been watching our lore shorts, you kind of sort of are confused what this is all about, maybe, because they each provide short little blurbs of information regarding very specific locations, regions, or characters, and hinting to a much wider and vast world. Well, this is what this video is here for. It's a bit uncuffed, it's a bit unscripted. I got my website up right here that I pretty much made myself, and I'm going to introduce you to World Without End, the Three Kingdoms, what are the lands of light, what is this all about, and let you understand the fundamental building blocks of this world and what I kind of want to do with it. Now, as I've said, I got a website up here on the screen. We're going to use this to explore because it's been pretty much built to house the lore of this world. Once again, a little unscripted, so you know, if I start to ramble a little bit, forgive me. I'll try to edit some of that out. But let's begin, shall we? Once we knew why we were here in these lands of triumph and terror. Now, I chose that particularly to try to encapsulate kind of what's going on here in a sense. Give you a kind of a hint that there's a hint of mystery there. And you got this real evil looking guy standing literally right next to that, along with a bunch of interesting characters at the top right here, right up here. Now, the mystery behind this world is that there's a war that lasted generations, and it wiped out kingdoms, and it completely changed how their world functioned. But we're going to get into that. All you need to know right now is that war wiped out much of their history, and they have no idea where their people came from, where these kingdoms came from, where they are right now. And you're going to see why that's important. Let's go ahead and scroll down. Now, I've been working on this for a while. You see a cyberpunk guy standing right next to this Rose Warrior Knight. That's because this world is a world that is meant. It started off as a place to encapsulate all the stories that would run through my mind because I was a natural storyteller and I just love stories. And a lot of them would just run through my mind from all sorts of genres. So I wanted to create a world to house these all in. And that's where it began. One of these stories, The Rooster's Crow, is currently available on my Substack for free. This is not a video to try to get you to go over there, but I'd appreciate it if you did, because I'm going to be releasing a lot of lore-based stuff on my Substack, as the website's going to be used to house a lot of that lore and kind of be a introductory piece for a lot of people, hence me using it right now. But I've also, because I am a graphic designer by trade, I designed that cover, I written this story, I did everything pretty much on my own. So if you think there's quality there, know that that's 100% coming from me, all right? And I appreciate you taking the time, okay? So let's continue. Check out the story there on the website. Table of contents kind of show you what you're going to find on here. Every good website needs one. Got some more soldier dudes back here. Kingdoms of Light, we're about to get into that. Maps and regions, we're not going to hit that today. That's going to kind of go beyond what we're talking about. Notable character, eventually going to hit that. Notable characters of the Abyss. You're going to learn what the Abyss is today, right? And updates. I have an updates page. I post all my updates on there. It's been a little while. I need to post one soon. This video is probably going to be an update in itself. So we're going to continue. What is World Without End? This, obviously a very important page. We're going to read this together, and then I'm going to break down World Without End a bit more for you. Let me go and take a sip of water real quick, actually. Thank you. Once again, uncuffed. World Without End is a new and fresh fantasy sci-fi world. Focus on fantasy and sci-fi. You're going to get a lot of both. Full of diverse landscapes and interesting, unique civilizations that strive to exist in a world of both ancient kingdoms and futuristic cities. Once again, I'm trying to hint really heavily here. you're going to get a lot of everything across the spectrum. Technological wonders built decades ago and mysterious creations that live and breathe together in this ever-evolving world of adventure and terror. That's important there because I don't just want there to be danger. There's terror out there, and you're going to understand why soon. 3 kingdoms of light, born in an endless plane of complete darkness. These lands are but a single blot of light, illuminated by the light rays above. Darkness lurks in that abyss that surrounds us. Now, if that doesn't sound cool or make fully sense, let me even freaking push it further, all right? Think of an endless plane of complete darkness, light rays coming down from the sky, and only a single area is illuminated in a literal endless plane. That is where they are. These 3 kingdoms are surrounded by bestial monsters trying to rip them apart. And you're going to understand even further why right now. The war, that's why. No matter where in the lands of light one may find themselves, everyone knows of the war. That is because all lands and all kingdoms participated in it. It is said the war lasted for generations, involving all kingdoms known and unknown alike. That is because a lot of unknown kingdoms were wiped out, and the history of them went along with them. This is a generational war, lasted a very, very long time. This war wiped out generations of people and knowledge alike. It was only when the dark creatures attacked from the abyss that the kingdoms of light were forced to unite under one banner. Their years of warfare tested when they realized the assaults from the dark abyss that surrounded them would not cease. The armies of light fell into a stringent alliance for the sake of their very survival. This is where history began again. This was called Year Zero. Now, I like to think that dramatic little retelling I just did of reading kind of encapsulates everything we're going for here. But if it doesn't, gigantic war in a land surrounded by darkness. The light is fighting itself for years, generations, and this darkness was never really a threat. And suddenly, out of nowhere, these beings and creatures and evil things crawl from the darkness and start assaulting the light, tearing apart the forces of light, whom these 3 kingdoms are very much different at this point. They have taken very different cultural avenues and have ended up at very different places. And none of them can face the forces of darkness alone, nor were they ready to. So when this happened, they were already in other battles. They already had lines drawn elsewhere, and those areas were left primarily defended unless enemies from other kingdoms were said to come through there. So when the darkness assaulted them, and it attacked the light, they had no idea what the hell was going on, and legions of men died. Kingdoms were wiped out that were too close to the darkness. It was ridiculous. And the darkness is known as the abyss, as in everything that surrounds them. All that darkness on all sides outside of the light is the abyss. And it was that forced them into that stringent alliance. They cannot actually survive without the aid of the other 3 kingdoms, at least at this point in their history, because that does change over time. That does change over time because my chair's a little squeaky. Hopefully you can't hear that. Because their societies rapidly are forced to evolve into something new. And we're going to share with you what. These are those 3 kingdoms. The Dune, masters of understanding and knowledge. Okay? These guys during the war played a primarily defensive role. They stayed back in their own lands. They didn't try to take territory. They're all about defending. Their borders were horrifically torn apart, and their people were savagely massacred many times during this war. And all they wanted to do was defend, defend, defend. And they did. And with that, they were able to cultivate a bit of their own land deep within their territories. And there, they've mastered these ancient ways and practices of what they call understanding. I'm actually going to switch my chair real quick. You're probably hearing it, but this is uncuffed and unscripted. So, yeah, if you would like some more cuffed and scripted stuff, please comment down below. But all right. So they got this thing called understanding, which is flowing all around them. It's almost like this life force that brings life to everything in this strange lands of light. It is not like ours. They don't live on a globe. It is an endless plane. Things work differently here, down to the plants and the way the plants work, which I've already have got weaved into the lore. I'll be happy to share that with you in a moment. But the dude, there are magic wielders, but it's not necessarily magic as much as it is this force that allows them to almost bend the will of nature around them in various ways. And I don't mean force as in the force from Star Wars, because it is much more mystical than that. You do get a lot more sparks, and you do get portals opening, and you do get illusions, and you get all that lovely stuff. But it's done through a mixture of wizardry and monkdom, if you will, mixed together, where basically their entire society is revolved around the usage of this understanding. And their young ones will be sent to this academy to have that unlocked within them through the discipline of controlling their emotions, aligning it with their mentality, and just kind of becoming an all-around disciplined person in their will, their emotion, and their mentality. And if one of these starts to go off, it starts to affect the other. If their emotions are too erratic, and then it's too or if their mentality is just kind of everywhere, their mind is just unsettled, they can do a lot of damage to people they love, people around them, and themselves, because what they wield is extremely powerful, but also has to be unlocked and trained through years of practice. And that's basically the magic system there. I'd love to go deeper into it, but by going deeper into it, we're making this video 1,000 times longer. Okay, now off to the second guys here, the Whitlonians, the Whitlow Masters of Technology and Progress. How the heck do you have a cyberpunk faction in this clearly fantasy world? Well, my friends, this is what happened, all right? There's rumors, because history isn't fully known here. The Whitlonians may or may not, don't know, have brokered a deal with some dark creatures from the abyss during the war, maybe a little after the war. And they may have gotten some unknown knowledge and technologies that they have incorporated deep within their own culture. And over time, they overthrew their king through a massive civil war as new ideas of progress and diplomacy started to emerge within their society. And they became much more of a republic as we know it, but as it is, they live in a gigantic cityscape. And there's their cyberpunk faction. There were essentially a bunch of small towns that just bloomed into big cities until there was just no more room to grow. Now, a lot of them are kind of in cold wars with each other, trying to industrialize beyond their capacities and take over each other's markets, and then eventually buy up each other's lands, so that way they can increase their industrialization and their power. And they probably would have the power to wipe out the other kingdoms, but it would take a severe amount of their population to do it. And they're culturally at odds with each other inside. There's a lot of issues between the cities. They don't like all working together as one. And they really, really are heavy isolationists. They consider themselves to be better than other kingdoms because of their technological progress, and they're the only ones with a form of that don't actually operate towards a a theocracy or a monarchy. They have much more of a system of a republic where every single city, they get a governor, and then the governors go to its capital city to essentially govern all the cities, and their governors get to choose a singular prime governor to govern them, so to say, and be the representative for all of Whitlow. Of course, he's corrupt beyond belief. Most of Whitlow is beyond corrupt, and there are good factions within Whitlow, but a lot of them are actually underground. They're in the underground. Like, their secret societies are those who are not corrupt, because it's too dangerous to be not corrupt openly in Whitlow in a lot of industries. All right, so I think we got a good idea of who Whitlow is. And another thing I should probably mention that's pretty critical to them is they're heavy isolationists. Most of them are isolationists, but nobody isolates more than Whitlow. People bored within the cityscape don't want to leave the cityscape. They literally have gigantic walls on all sides because they have a very inconvenient spot in the kingdom and are kind of closer to darkness and an open plains fields, as the other two kingdoms are nestled up against mountains or on top of mountains. They are not. So they actually built these gigantic walls that outsiders sometimes refer to as the monster because of how vast it is, how daunting it is approaching these things. And that's kind of a portion of their defense. Because I'm probably also going to show you a map, which I probably already should have showed you, but I'll make sure to put it up if I haven't already in the editing process. Now, on to the last kingdom, which is Daughter. The Daughter Knights, this is your war and arts faction. The Daughter Knights believe that a mythical creature called the Phoenix, nobody else really believes this, actually gave them a blessing when they were but a small tribal people in a land of tribal warfare. And this blessing empowered them with what they call the power of the Phoenix, the blessing of the Phoenix. And it gives them strength, mental clarity beyond belief. They are faster. They are stronger. Think of like a bunch of Captain Americas who are also 3 times as smart. Something like that. It also gave them a keen eye and ear for the arts, which is why they also became a bit of the art faction. In fact, they're such an art faction, their history is literally written in poetry. But they're also a warring faction. Their poets are known as war poets because they write poetry, well, a couple yards behind the front line, so that way they can get a good view of what's going on, or from very dangerous vantage points. That's why they're in full armor. They have these huge shields, and behind the shield is almost a tapestry for them to paint or to write on, because they also have artists who are painting what's going on, and they often travel with royalty or somebody that is close to royalty who has hired them to kind of paint or write their exploits for their own personal history books. And of course, they adore history and the recording of history. I think that's something that all 3 kingdoms have come to adore because of the loss of so much history. They all kind of adore it. So they all have their own ways of continuously recording history, and this is theirs. But I heavily digressed there. This video is probably heading towards 20 minutes, so forgive me. But if you love lore and you love what you're hearing here, I got links down below to official websites, to my Substack where we already released the story, and I'm releasing stuff constantly. If you go to my Substack, I actually show off a lot of really cool lore stuff there. It's pretty much new, less than 2 weeks old, but I've already released 1 short story with the cover. It's in a PDF, fully formatted. You're going to love it. But let's continue on with the Daughter. All right, so they're your warring faction, but they're also strategically smart and economically savvy. They, for a season, actually almost ruled over Whitlow because they managed to get the Whitlonians to be heavily dependent on Daughter imports because they have the largest kingdom. They are the furthest away with an ocean and a gigantic desert in between the other 2 kingdoms, and they own the other side of the coastline. They're also one of the smallest armies, so they can't police it all. So they got these areas called freelands, which essentially means we're not going to police it, but they go on about people who wish to be free and are underneath Daughter rule, and have their own villages and livelihoods, can live in the free lands. And some basically saying, yeah, we don't have enough to police there. So yeah, there you go. But they are very strong warriors. They live by a creed and a code. Those who are blessed by the Phoenix are all born in Castle Phoenix, which is on top of a frickin' flowing volcano. It is an ancient castle built of strange materials on top of a flowing volcano that is actually cold inside. This is the crazy thing. The material it's made of, the compound heat, somehow produces a cold feeling upon the other side of the stone. The heat produces cold. They have no idea how it happened. It was built by them decades ago. They believe the castle itself, beyond decades, centuries ago, they believe the castle itself is a gift by the Phoenix. They don't know where the Phoenix is. They believe it's there, and they say they see the Phoenix. And this is actually because their blessing kind of changes the way they see things around them and frequencies they can see. And they can actually see forms of energy. And the energy what the blessing is looks like fire around them. And it actually does give them the ability to withstand heat and flame. And for the royalty, those of the royal bloodline, because it was a chieftain who went up there and brokered a deal with the Phoenix, and it was his bloodline that would be chosen. This tribal leader would be chosen to be the king and lead the people. And there were some strange speculations and things done with their literal bloodline, where those within it, they're all royalty. They get the largest portion of the blessing, where they could also manipulate and control fire. So they can literally make like flame spears and flame weapons, not be harmed by it. They don't often do this because it does actually affect their eyesight, like flame would anybody else's eyesight. So it's not necessarily the smartest thing to constantly pull out as a trick, as like the end all be all. Pull out flame techniques all the time. Well, now I can't see that well. Now I'm seeing like hot flamish distortions in the atmosphere. That's going to affect them too. So you can literally light themselves on fire and go into combat, but they're not going to be able to see much. So that's all kind of a negate for them and why they don't go overboard. Each kingdom has its own little negations to keep them from going overboard. But essentially, where they're at right now is they're ruled by a queen, because there can only be one bloodline male of the Phoenix born at a time. And the last one died a long time ago. And now they are ruled by queens, and they're kind of awaiting the birth of a king. It'll be a bit of a virgin birth, because he could be born Phoenix-esque. What's going to happen is the mother will get impregnated, she will be burnt, and then a form of her, which be actually slightly younger, with her newborn baby, will be left in the ashes. That's how Phoenix-I get born, if you will. Right? You guys get a good understanding of what you're dealing with here? The three separate kingdoms? I mean, I can go on for hours, but I think we went on for a while, and we didn't even actually read the text based on each and every one of these kingdoms. And my throat hurts right now, so I'm going to drink a little water. I think we're going to call it here. If you like what you hear, if you like what you're seeing, please subscribe.